Stay quiet and don't move. The Maid saved the billionaire from a mafia ambush. Subscribe to The Maid's Secret for more stories. Don't risk missing the next story. Follow, comment, and share. Let's begin. The Westbrook estate stood like an ivory fortress against the darkening Massachusetts sky. Rain had been threatening all day, hanging in the air with electric anticipation. Inside the mansion's gleaming kitchen, Elena Reyes methodically polished the silver service that would be used for tonight's dinner. Her movements were precise, practiced over the 5 years she had worked as head housekeeper for Alexander Westbrook, one of Boston's most powerful men. "Elena, Mr. Westbrook wants the Macallan 25 served after dinner, not before," Mrs. Hoffman, the house manager, announced as she swept into the kitchen, her tailored black suit as starched as her personality. "And make sure the temperature in the dining room stays at exactly 70 degrees. You know how he gets when he's negotiating." Elena nodded without looking up from her work. "Yes, Mrs. Hoffman. I've already adjusted the thermostat." At 34, Elena had perfected the art of anticipating needs before they were expressed. It was what made her invaluable, though she doubted Mr. Westbrook had ever noticed. To him, she was like the expensive wallpaper or silent air filtration system, functioning best when completely unnoticed. "The Milano group will be arriving at 7, Mrs. Hoffman continued, checking her tablet. "Mr. Westbrook says this deal is extremely delicate. Absolute discretion is required." Something in Mrs. Hoffman's tone made Elena glance up. There was tension in the older woman's face, a tightness around her eyes that Elena had learned to recognize over the years. "Is everything all right?" Elena asked. Mrs. Hoffman's expression closed like a vault. "Just do your job, Elena. And remember, after serving the first course, the staff is to remain in the service wing unless called." After Mrs. Hoffman left, Elena finished polishing the last silver fork, her reflection distorted in its curved surface. Outside, the first rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. By 6:30, Elena had transformed into the perfect servant. Black dress, hair pulled back, nearly invisible. She moved through the grand entrance hall, lighting the imported candles that Mr. Westbrook insisted created the perfect ambience for business discussions. Through the massive windows, she could see headlights approaching along the private driveway, cutting through the now pouring rain. The security team was unusually visible tonight, 4 men stationed around the property rather than the usual 2. Their faces were unfamiliar, not Westbrook's regular team. As she adjusted a flower arrangement, Elena overheard fragments of conversation between the head of security and his assistant. Milano's people insisted on their own security protocol. "Don't like it, but the boss says it's worth $50 million to play nice. Just keep an eye on Caruso especially." Elena had learned long ago that being invisible made her privy to conversations never meant for her ears. People spoke freely around the help, as if servants lacked the capacity to understand or remember important details. It was a blind spot she'd observed in powerful people. They only saw what they considered worthy of attention. At precisely 7, the doorbell rang. Through the rain-streaked windows, Elena could see 3 black SUVs parked in the circular driveway. The regular security guard, Thompson, admitted 5 men in expensive suits, their shoes leaving wet marks on the marble floor that Elena would later clean. Their leader, a silver-haired man with cold blue eyes, handed his coat to Thompson without even glancing at him. "Mr. Milano, welcome to Westbrook Estate," came Alexander Westbrook's voice as he descended the grand staircase. At 45, Westbrook moved with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and a physique maintained by a personal trainer, he extended his hand to his guest. "Westbrook," Milano replied, his accent subtly European despite his Italian name. "Quite a storm to drive through. I hope what you're offering is worth the journey." There was something in Milano's smile that made Elena's skin prickle. She had served countless businessmen over the years and had developed an instinct for the undercurrents that ran beneath polite conversation. This man was not here merely for business. "I believe you'll find it exceeds expectations," Westbrook replied smoothly. "Shall we move to the dining room? I've arranged for a private dinner before we discuss terms." Elena followed at a respectful distance, preparing to serve the first course. As the men settled around the massive oak table, she noticed Milano's associates positioning themselves strategically, 1 near the window, 1 by the door to the kitchen, and 2 flanking their boss. They weren't simply assistants. They moved with the calculated awareness of men accustomed to anticipating threat. The dinner proceeded with practiced elegance. Elena served the chilled lobster bisque, then the perfectly seared Wagyu beef, all while maintaining her professional invisibility. But as the evening progressed, she began noticing discordant details. The way Milano's men barely touched their food, the subtle hand signals they occasionally exchanged, the bulges in their tailored jackets that suggested they were armed, despite Westbrook's strict no-weapons policy in his home. During the main course, Elena was arranging wine glasses on the sideboard when she caught a fragment of conversation that made her pulse quicken. "The Petrov situation has been dealt with then?" Milano asked, cutting his steak with surgical precision. Westbrook's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "I wasn't aware you had concerns about that." Milano smiled, a predator's display of teeth. "I make it my business to be thorough, Alexander. Your handling of the Russian contracts has raised questions among certain parties." "Those contracts were legally obtained," Westbrook replied, his voice level but with an undercurrent of tension that Elena had rarely heard from her usually unflappable employer. "Legal is such a flexible concept, wouldn't you agree?" Milano sipped his wine, his eyes never leaving Westbrook's face, particularly when documents may suggest otherwise. The air in the room shifted, charged with something dangerous. Elena kept her eyes down, her movements mechanical as she cleared plates and prepared for dessert service. But her mind was racing, cataloging the increasing signs that something was very wrong about this dinner. As she returned to the kitchen to retrieve the dessert course, a flash of lightning illuminated the service corridor. In that brief, electric moment, Elena saw something that made her blood run cold, a shadow moving past the garden-facing windows where no one should have been. Not the shadow of a tree branch or security guard, but the distinctive silhouette of a person attempting to remain unseen. Placing the dessert tray down silently, Elena moved to the small security monitor in the kitchen that displayed feeds from the estate's cameras. What she saw confirmed her fears. Two figures in dark clothing were approaching the house from the east garden, expertly avoiding the main security cameras. The storm provided perfect cover for their movements, the howling wind masking any sound they might make. Elena's mind raced. Why weren't the alarms triggering? Where were Westbrook's regular security team? And why had Milano's men positioned themselves so strategically throughout the dining room? The answer came to her with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a business dinner. It was an ambush. Elena had seconds to decide what to do. Call the police? They would never arrive in time. Alert security? If her suspicions were correct, they might be compromised. Run? That would leave Westbrook and everyone else in the house vulnerable. Without conscious thought, she found herself moving back toward the dining room. Through the partially open door, she could see Milano raising his glass in a toast, his men subtly checking their watches. One of them glanced toward the window, where the faintest glint of metal reflected in the glass, the barrel of a gun. Elena had spent years being invisible, silent, forgettable, but in this moment, she knew that remaining unseen meant certain death for her employer. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped into the light of the dining room. "Mr. Westbrook," she said, her voice unexpectedly steady, despite the hammering of her heart. She approached the table and leaned down as if to whisper something about the service. Instead, she murmured 4 words directly into his ear. "Stay quiet, and don't move." Westbrook's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in irritation at her unprecedented breach of protocol. "What are you—" "There's a red laser sight on your chest," Elena whispered, barely moving her lips. "Armed men outside the east windows. Security compromised." In that instant, comprehension dawned on Westbrook's face. His years of business instinct told him what his conscious mind wanted to deny. This trusted employee had no reason to lie about something so serious. His gaze flicked toward Milano, whose smile had frozen in place, then to the window where, true to Elena's warning, a small red dot was now visible on the tablecloth near his hand. "Is there a problem, Westbrook?" Milano asked, his tone deceptively casual. Before Westbrook could answer, Elena accidentally knocked over a crystal water glass, sending it shattering to the floor. In the split second that everyone's attention turned to the noise, she grabbed Westbrook by the arm and yanked him down below the table with surprising strength. The timing was perfect. A heartbeat later, the window exploded inward in a shower of glass and the crystal chandelier above the table shattered as bullets tore through it. The dining room erupted into chaos, Milano's men drawing weapons, the intruders firing through the broken windows, bodyguards shouting into their radios. Under the table, Elena gripped Westbrook's arm with iron determination. "Service tunnel," she hissed. "Behind the panel in the butler's pantry. Leads to the wine cellar. Stay low." For perhaps the first time in his adult life, Alexander Westbrook found himself following someone else's lead. Crawling alongside Elena, he marveled at how she navigated through the gunfire and shouting with the same efficiency she brought to managing his household. They reached the butler's pantry as another explosion rocked the dining room, a flash grenade, judging by the disorienting light that briefly illuminated the chaos behind them. Elena's fingers found the hidden release mechanism for the service panel, a remnant from the Prohibition era, when the original owner of the estate had needed discreet access to his illegal liquor supply. The panel swung open to reveal a narrow passage, and Elena pushed Westbrook into the darkness ahead of her. As she sealed the entrance behind them, the last thing she saw was Milano's cold eyes scanning the room, his expression one of calculated fury rather than surprise. "Who are you, really?" Westbrook gasped as they stumbled through the pitch-black tunnel, guided only by Elena's memory of its twists and turns. "How did you—" "I'm exactly who you think I am," she interrupted, her voice tight with fear and exertion. "I clean your house, serve your meals, and apparently save your life. Now please, Mr. Westbrook, for once, just be quiet and follow my lead." The tunnel ended at a heavy wooden door that opened into the estate's vast wine cellar. The reinforced concrete walls dampened the sounds of chaos from above, reducing them to a muffled, distant cacophony. Elena guided Westbrook to the far corner, behind a rack of vintage Bordeaux that cost more than she earned in a year. "Stay here," she instructed, her professional deference momentarily forgotten in the urgency of survival. "I need to find a way to contact the police." Westbrook grabbed her wrist as she turned to leave. In the dim emergency lighting of the cellar, his face looked stripped of its usual arrogance. Vulnerable, human. "Why?" he asked, and the single word contained multitudes. "Why risk your life? Why help me? Why care?" Elena stared at him, this man who had barely acknowledged her existence for 5 years. The answer that came to her surprised even herself. "Because right now, Mr. Westbrook, I'm all you've got." The sound of sirens began to penetrate even the thick walls of the cellar, distant at first, then growing steadily louder. Above them, the gunfire had stopped, replaced by shouting and the heavy footfalls of people searching the house. Elena's trembling hands found her phone in her pocket. The screen was cracked. She must have damaged it in their escape, but it still functioned. The 911 operator's voice came through clearly as she whispered their location and situation. "Help is coming," she told Westbrook, who had sunk to the floor, his immaculate suit now covered in dust and debris. "But we need to stay absolutely silent. They'll be searching for you." As they waited in the shadowed corner of the cellar, the reality of what had just occurred began to settle over them both. The perfectly orchestrated evening had been a trap. Milano, if that was even his real name, had never intended for Westbrook to see the morning. And Elena, the invisible servant, had seen it coming when no one else had. The cellar door creaked, and both froze in terror. A beam of light swept across the room, illuminating rows of wine bottles and casting long shadows. Elena instinctively moved in front of Westbrook, a human shield with nothing but determination as her weapon. The beam of light found them, momentarily blinding Elena. She raised a hand to shield her eyes, preparing for the worst. "Police! Don't move!" The relief that flooded through her nearly brought Elena to her knees. As officers swarmed the cellar, securing the area and checking them for injuries, she finally allowed herself to tremble, the delayed reaction to the adrenaline that had kept her functioning through the nightmare. An officer wrapped a shock blanket around her shoulders, his voice kind but professional as he asked questions she could barely process. Through the haze of aftermath, she caught glimpses of Westbrook, being escorted upstairs, surrounded by a protective detail, his face still registering disbelief. As paramedics checked her for injuries, Elena overheard fragments of police radio chatter. 2 suspects in custody. Others fled the scene. 1 officer down, condition stable. Milano nowhere to be found. It wasn't over, she realized. Whatever had brought those men to Westbrook's door tonight wasn't resolved by this single failed attempt. The danger remained, perhaps even greater now that their element of surprise was gone. A detective approached her, notebook in hand. "Ms. Reyes, I understand you're the one who alerted Mr. Westbrook to the danger. Can you tell me exactly what you saw?" Elena looked up at him, suddenly aware of how this must appear. A domestic employee somehow anticipating a professional hit. She could see the suspicion forming behind his professional demeanor. She began, then stopped, uncertain how to explain her role in tonight's events without sounding complicit. "I noticed things. It's my job to pay attention to details." From across the room, now filled with police and emergency personnel, Westbrook's voice cut through the chaos. "Detective," he called out, his authoritative tone returning despite his disheveled appearance. "That woman saved my life tonight. Whatever questions you have for her can wait until she's received proper medical attention." Their eyes met across the crowded cellar, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that the invisible lines that had separated their worlds had been irrevocably crossed. In saving his life, Elena had destroyed the comfortable fiction of her invisibility, and in owing his life to her, Westbrook had lost the armor of indifference that had defined their relationship. As dawn broke over the damaged estate, Elena sat on the steps of an ambulance watching police technicians comb the grounds for evidence. Westbrook approached, looking strange in the borrowed police jacket that had replaced his ruined suit jacket. "They tell me I can't stay here," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Not until they've secured the property and determined the full extent of the security breach." Elena nodded, too drained to maintain her usual professional demeanor. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere safe," he replied, then hesitated. "The detective tells me you refused protection. Why?" She looked away, toward the beautiful gardens now trampled by police activity. "Who would want to hurt a housekeeper?" "The same people who just tried to kill me," Westbrook countered. "You're a witness. And more importantly, you're now a variable they didn't account for." The realization chilled her. In 5 years of employment, this was the longest conversation she had ever had with Alexander Westbrook, and it was about people wanting to kill them both. "Come with me," he said suddenly, "to the safe location, just until we figure out what exactly is happening here." Elena stared at him, trying to process this unexpected offer. "Mr. Westbrook, Alexander," he interrupted. "Under the circumstances, I think you've earned the right to use my first name." A police officer approached before she could respond. "Mr. Westbrook, the secure transport is ready." Westbrook nodded, then turned back to Elena, extending his hand. "Coming?" As she hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy in her exhausted mind, a distant black car caught her attention, parked just beyond the police barricade at the estate's main gate. Though she couldn't see the driver, something about its presence sent a chill of recognition through her. In that moment, Elena Reyes, the invisible woman who had seen what no one else could, made her choice. She took Alexander Westbrook's outstretched hand. "Yes," she said quietly, "I'm coming." What neither of them yet realized was that this night had set in motion events that would unravel decades of carefully guarded secrets that connected them in ways they couldn't begin to imagine. The ambush had failed, but it was only the opening move in a game that had been planned for years. And Elena's 4 whispered words, "Stay quiet and don't move," had just changed all the rules. The secure transport, a bulletproof SUV with government plates, wound through the rain-slicked streets of Boston. Dawn was breaking, casting a pale glow over the city skyline. Inside, Elena sat across from Westbrook, both still in their dust-covered clothes from the night before. "Where are we going?" Elena finally asked, breaking the tense silence. "A property outside the city," Westbrook replied, his eyes constantly scanning the road behind them. "It's not in my name. Very few people know about it." The exhaustion of the night was catching up with Elena. Her hands still trembled slightly, and her mind kept replaying the moment she'd seen the gun barrel through the window. 5 years of quiet service, and now here she was, fleeing for her life with a man she barely knew despite cleaning his home every day. "Mr. West, Alexander," she corrected herself, the familiarity feeling strange on her tongue. "Those men, they knew you. This wasn't random." His jaw tightened. "No, it wasn't." He studied her face. "How did you know, Elena?" Before anyone else realized what was happening, she looked down at her calloused hands. Little things. The way Milano's men positioned themselves. How they barely touched their food but kept checking their watches. The security team was different. Not your regular people. And then, she hesitated. Then, I saw the reflection of the gun in the window. Her voice was steady despite the memory. And I knew. Westbrook leaned forward. But why act? Why not just leave? Save yourself. The question hung in the air between them. Elena had asked herself the same thing during those chaotic moments in the dining room. She settled on the only truth she knew. I don't know. I just couldn't let it happen. The SUV turned off the main highway onto a winding country road. After 20 minutes of increasingly remote terrain, they approached a modern structure nestled against the side of a hill, all glass and steel, yet somehow blending with the natural landscape. "We're here," Westbrook said, as the vehicle passed through an electronic gate. The safe house was smaller than his mansion, but no less impressive. A modernist retreat with panoramic views of the surrounding forest. Inside, everything was minimalist and functional, a stark contrast to the opulent estate they'd fled. A stern-faced man in plain clothes greeted them. "Mr. Westbrook, the perimeter is secure. We've swept the building. Communications are established with a secure line to Director Collins." "Thank you, Maddox." Westbrook turned to Elena. "Special Agent Maddox will be handling our security. You can trust him." Elena blinked in confusion. "Special Agent? FBI? Private security with government clearance," Westbrook explained, though something in his tone suggested this wasn't the complete truth. "There's a guest suite upstairs. You should rest." Before she could respond, a sleek laptop on the central table chimed. Westbrook moved quickly to answer the video call. A silver-haired woman in a tailored suit appeared on screen. "Alexander, glad to see you're in one piece." Her eyes shifted to Elena. "Is that her? The housekeeper?" "Yes," Westbrook replied. "Elena Reyes. She saved my life tonight." The woman studied Elena through the screen. "Ms. Reyes, I'm Director Collins. I understand you demonstrated remarkable awareness during the attack. We'd like to know more about that." Elena felt suddenly self-conscious in her dust-covered uniform. "I just noticed things that seemed wrong. That's all. That level of situational awareness is rare, Ms. Reyes, especially in civilians." Director Collins's gaze was penetrating even through the screen. "We'll need a full debrief, but it can wait until you've rested. Alexander, we need to talk. Privately." Maddox showed Elena to the guest suite, a minimalist room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking dense forest. After the longest shower of her life, Elena collapsed onto the bed, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. Who was Director Collins? What agency did she represent? And why did a billionaire businessman have connections to what was clearly some form of government security operation? Sleep claimed her before she could untangle these questions. When Elena woke, the afternoon sun was low in the sky. She found fresh clothes laid out, simple but expensive items in exactly her size. The house was quiet as she made her way downstairs. She found Westbrook in the open-concept kitchen, staring at a tablet computer. He'd changed into casual clothes, jeans and a simple button-down that made him look unexpectedly approachable. "You slept 6 hours," he said without looking up. "There's food in the refrigerator." Elena hesitated, the ingrained habits of service making this new dynamic uncomfortable. For 5 years, she had prepared his meals, not shared them. "Thank you," she managed, opening the refrigerator to find it fully stocked. As she prepared a simple sandwich, she noticed Westbrook watching her. "The clothes fit," he observed. "Yes, thank you." She paused. "How did you know my size?" "I didn't." Maddox arranged it. He set down his tablet. "Elena, we need to talk about what happens next." She brought her plate to the counter, maintaining distance between them. "What does happen next?" "That depends partly on you." Westbrook's expression was unreadable. "Milano is still out there. The 2 men captured at the estate aren't talking. The police have a protection detail on your apartment building, but Milano has resources." Elena finished the thought. "And I'm a loose end." "Yes." He studied her face. "What I don't understand is how a housekeeper recognized a professional hit in progress when my trained security team didn't." Elena met his gaze steadily. "I told you, I noticed things." "That's not a sufficient explanation." His voice hardened slightly. "Director Collins ran a background check on you this morning. Your history is remarkably unremarkable. 5 years working for me. Before that, housekeeping at the Four Seasons. Community college courses in business administration. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Is being law-abiding suspicious now?" Elena asked, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "It is when combined with the skills you displayed last night." Westbrook leaned forward. "You recognized tactical positioning. You identified concealed weapons. You knew exactly how to move during an active shooter situation. Those aren't skills most housekeepers possess." Elena set down her sandwich, appetite gone. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything, I'm asking directly. Who are you really?" "Elena Reyes." The question hung in the air between them. Elena felt a familiar coldness settle in her stomach. The same feeling she'd had countless times before when her carefully constructed life threatened to unravel. "I'm exactly who my background check says I am," she replied evenly. "A woman who has worked hard her entire life to stay out of trouble and pay her bills. Nothing more." Westbrook studied her for a long moment. "For now, let's say I believe you. There's still the matter of your safety. Milano will assume you know something about my business, whether you do or not. You can't go back to your apartment." I can't just disappear from my life, Elena protested. I have responsibilities. People who will notice if I vanish. Like who? Westbrook challenged. Your emergency contact form lists no family. You haven't taken a vacation in 5 years. Who exactly would miss you, Elena? The brutal assessment stung because it was accurate. Elena had deliberately kept her connections minimal. Safer that way, fewer complications. Now that calculated isolation felt like a trap. What do you propose? She finally asked. Stay here under protection until we identify everyone involved in the attack. Once it's safe, I'll ensure you're compensated generously for the disruption to your life. And if it's never safe? The question escaped before she could stop it. Westbrook didn't answer immediately. Let's hope that's not the case. The conversation was interrupted by Maddox entering the room. Sir, we have movement on the Caruso front. Team picked up activity at the warehouse location. Westbrook stood immediately. Show me. They moved to a room Elena hadn't seen before. A small command center with multiple screens displaying security feeds and data. On one monitor, satellite imagery showed a dockside warehouse with vehicles moving in and out. Facial recognition confirmed Caruso on site 20 minutes ago, Maddox reported, pointing to a grainy image of a man entering the building. Milano's right hand. What about Milano himself? Westbrook asked. No visual confirmation yet, but signal intelligence suggests he's in the country. Elena stood in the doorway watching this exchange with growing confusion. This was far beyond the realm of normal business security. Westbrook caught her eye and seemed to come to a decision. Elena should hear this, he said to Maddox's evident surprise. She's involved now whether we like it or not. Maddox looked uncomfortable but nodded. Your call, sir. Westbrook turned to Elena. What do you know about me? About my business? She considered the question. Westbrook Industries. Real estate development. Technology investments. Shipping. You sit on the boards of several major corporations and charitable foundations. That's the public profile, Westbrook acknowledged. The reality is more complicated. For the past decade, I've been working with a specialized government task force targeting international financial crimes and money laundering operations. Elena stared at him, trying to process this revelation. You're what? An undercover agent? More of a strategic asset, he corrected. My business dealings give me access to circles that government agents can't penetrate. I pass information to Director Collins' team. The Milano dinner, Elena realized. It was a sting operation. Exactly. Except Milano somehow discovered my connection to the task force. What should have been my extraction of information from him became his attempt to eliminate me. Elena sank into a chair, her world shifting beneath her feet. The billionaire she'd worked for all these years was secretly working with the government to take down criminal organizations. It sounded like the plot of a ridiculous thriller novel, yet the evidence was all around her in this high-tech safe house. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because your life is in danger because of my work, Westbrook replied simply. And because I need to understand how you fit into all this. I told you. You noticed things other people missed, he interrupted. Professional things, security things. That's not normal, Elena. No matter how observant you claim to be. Before she could respond, one of the screens flashed an alert. Maddox moved quickly to the computer. Incoming from Director Collins, he announced, typing a command that brought the director's face onto the main screen. We have a problem, Collins said without preamble. The 2 suspects from the estate attack are dead, killed in federal custody less than an hour ago. How is that possible? Westbrook demanded. Inside help. Had to be. Collins's expression was grim. This goes deeper than Milano. We're moving you to a secondary location immediately. What about Elena? Westbrook asked. Collins's eyes shifted to where Elena sat. Miss Reyes continues to present an interesting puzzle. My team completed a deeper background check. Everything looks perfect. Too perfect, in fact. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. What does that mean? Westbrook asked. It means, Collins said, her eyes never leaving Elena's face, that someone with considerable resources created her background. The Elena Reyes who works for you didn't exist 10 years ago. The silence that followed Director Collins's statement was deafening. Elena felt the weight of both Westbrook's and Maddox's stares, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. That's impossible, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Is it? Collins countered from the screen. Our facial recognition found no matches prior to your employment at the Four Seasons. Your social security number was issued only 11 years ago. Your college transcripts show a student who never attended a single campus event. or joined any clubs. You're a ghost with paperwork, Ms. Reyes. Elena's hands gripped the edge of her chair, knuckles white. You're wrong. Am I? Collins's voice softened slightly. Then explain how a housekeeper recognized tactical formations and countered a professional hit. Explain why there are no childhood photos of you anywhere. No old friends. No family. Westbrook stepped closer to Elena, his expression unreadable. Who are you working for? No one. The denial burst from her with unexpected force. I work for you, that's all. We don't have time for this, Maddox interrupted. If the safe house location is compromised, we need to move now. Collins nodded on screen. Agreed. Extraction team is 15 minutes out. Alexander, bring Ms. Reyes. We'll continue this discussion at the secure facility. The screen went black, leaving Elena alone with the two men. Westbrook studied her for a long moment. Whatever the truth is, he said quietly, you saved my life yesterday. That buys you some goodwill. But if I find out you're connected to Milano or his organization— I'm not, Elena said firmly, meeting his gaze. I swear it. Maddox moved efficiently through the safe house, activating what appeared to be a data wiping protocol on the computers. Sir, we need to grab only essentials. 3 minutes max. Elena followed Westbrook upstairs, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Her documentation was flawless, she had made certain of that. How had they found the seams in her carefully constructed identity so quickly? In the guest room, she changed into practical clothes from the wardrobe, jeans, a dark sweater, sturdy boots, movements automatic while her thoughts spiraled. She caught her reflection in the mirror, wondering if these strangers now saw what she had worked so hard to hide. Downstairs, the quiet hum of a helicopter approaching broke the silence. Maddox handed Elena a small backpack. Emergency supplies. Stay close to Mr. Westbrook at all times. They exited through the rear of the house as the helicopter touched down on a small pad hidden among the trees. 2 armed men in tactical gear secured the perimeter as they approached. Change of plans, one shouted over the rotor noise, his voice tense. Breach at primary extraction point. We're diverting to Site Charlie. Maddox's expression hardened. Confirmed how? Director's orders, authentication, Sierra November 9. The exchange clearly satisfied Maddox, who nodded and guided them toward the helicopter. As Elena climbed aboard, a distant reflection caught her eye, sunlight glinting off something in the woods beyond the property line. Without thinking, she grabbed Westbrook's arm, pulling him down just as a shot rang out. The bullet shattered the helicopter's side window where his head had been moments before. Sniper! Maddox shouted, pushing them both to the ground as the extraction team returned fire. In the chaos that followed, Elena found herself moving with practiced efficiency, staying low, using the helicopter for cover, assessing exit routes. It was like muscle memory, actions her body remembered even as her mind screamed in confusion. The house, she yelled to Westbrook over the gunfire. Service entrance. There's a blind spot in the tree line. Westbrook stared at her for a split second, then nodded to Maddox. The security chief hesitated, then signaled to the team. Under covering fire, they retreated to the house in a hunched run. Once inside, Elena led them to a small mudroom off the kitchen. That hillside has full visibility of the front and the helipad, but this side is partially obscured by the retaining wall. How do you know this? Westbrook demanded. You've been here less than 24 hours. Elena ignored the question. Is there a vehicle we can access from this side of the house? Maddox nodded grimly. Emergency garage. Underground access. They moved through the house to what appeared to be a pantry. Maddox pressed his palm to a hidden scanner, revealing a descending staircase. The sound of gunfire continued outside, but more distant now, the extraction team engaging the attackers. The underground garage housed 2 vehicles, a nondescript SUV and an armored sedan. Maddox went straight for the sedan. Secure communications are in the glove compartment, he told Westbrook. We'll take the mountain access road. It's longer but provides better cover. As they prepared to leave, the building shook with an explosion from above. They're breaching the main level, Maddox said grimly. We need to move now. The sedan accelerated up a narrow ramp and out through a concealed entrance on the far side of the property. Elena watched through the rear window as smoke began to rise from the safe house. Director Collins is rerouting an extraction team to meet us at Checkpoint Delta, Maddox reported, checking the secure phone. 30 minutes out. Westbrook turned to Elena, his expression hard. You're going to tell me everything now. She met his gaze, the familiar coldness settling in her chest. For years she had lived in fear of this moment, when her carefully constructed identity would crumble, and she would have to face the truth of who she really was. "I don't know where to begin," she admitted. "The beginning would be traditional," Westbrook said, no hint of humor in his voice. Elena took a deep breath. "My name is not Elena Reyes." The admission hung in the air between them. "Who are you then?" Westbrook pressed. "I don't know anymore." Her voice was barely audible. "Elena Reyes is who I've been for almost 10 years now. Before that." The sedan swerved suddenly as Maddox took a sharp turn onto a Forest Service road. "We've got a tail. 2 vehicles, closing fast." Westbrook glanced at the side mirror. "Milano's men?" "Unlikely," Maddox responded, accelerating the heavy vehicle. "This feels like a government intercept pattern." "Collins?" Westbrook asked. "I don't think so," Maddox replied grimly. "Sir, I'm not certain who to trust right now." Elena watched as the pursuing vehicles gained ground. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Professional, determined, the kind of pursuit she recognized all too well. "They're not after you," she said quietly. "They're after me." Both men turned to look at her. "What are you talking about?" Westbrook demanded. Before she could answer, the lead pursuing vehicle accelerated alongside them. The passenger window rolled down to reveal a man in a dark suit aiming what looked like a specialized weapon. "EMP gun!" Maddox shouted, swerving hard. The pulse hit the back of their sedan, immediately shutting down its electronic systems. The vehicle rolled to a stop as Maddox struggled with the suddenly dead steering. "Out! Now!" he ordered, drawing his sidearm. They scrambled from the disabled vehicle as the pursuers surrounded them. 8 men in tactical gear emerged, weapons trained on their position. Their movements were precise, coordinated, not criminal enforcers but trained operatives. "Stand down, Maddox," called a commanding voice. A tall man with steel-gray hair stepped forward from the lead vehicle. "This doesn't concern you or Westbrook." "Agent Warren," Maddox responded, recognition clear in his voice. "What is this?" "National security matter," Warren replied, his eyes fixed on Elena. "We're taking the woman." "On whose authority?" Westbrook demanded. "She's under Director Collins' protection." Warren smiled thinly. "Collins doesn't have jurisdiction here. Step aside, Mr. Westbrook. This doesn't concern your arrangement with her agency." Elena felt a strange calm settle over her as the moment she had feared for years finally arrived. These men knew who she really was, or at least who she had been. "It's okay," she said to Westbrook and Maddox. "I'll go with them." "Elena," Westbrook began. "That's not my name," she interrupted gently. "It never was." Warren approached, keeping his distance from Maddox's still-raised weapon. "Julia Keller. By order of the National Security Agency, you're being brought in for questioning regarding breaches of intelligence protocols and potential espionage." The name hit Westbrook like a physical blow. "Julia Keller? The Julia Keller who disappeared after the Moscow intelligence breach in 2015? Warren's eyes narrowed. "That information is classified, Mr. Westbrook, even with your clearance level." Elena, or Julia, felt strangely weightless as her two worlds collided. "Lower your weapon, Maddox. These men will kill you without hesitation if you don't." Maddox looked to Westbrook, who nodded reluctantly. The security chief slowly placed his weapon on the ground. Warren gestured, and 2 agents approached Elena with restraints. She submitted without resistance, years of running finally at an end. "You can't just take her," Westbrook protested. "Collins needs to be informed. There are protocols." "Mr. Westbrook," Warren cut him off. "You've been harboring a fugitive intelligence officer who abandoned her post during a critical operation and has been living under a false identity for nearly a decade. Whatever claim you think you have here is irrelevant." As the agents led her toward their vehicle, Elena looked back at Westbrook. The man who had barely noticed her for 5 years was now watching her with an expression of utter disbelief. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "For what?" he called after her. "For lying? Or for getting caught?" She had no answer for him. Inside the government vehicle, Warren sat across from her, studying her face. 10 years, Julia. You've led us on quite a chase. I'm surprised it took you so long," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Oh, we found you years ago," Warren said, surprising her. "Working as a housekeeper for one of our most valuable civilian assets." The irony was quite something. Elena stared at him. "You knew? All this time?" "Of course we knew. The question is why we let you stay there." Warren leaned forward. "Did you really think it was coincidence that placed you in Alexander Westbrook's household? Nothing in your life has been coincidence, Julia. Not for a very long time." The revelation struck her like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" I'm saying your cover as Elena Reyes was permitted to continue because it served our purposes. Warren's smile didn't reach his eyes, just as it serves our purposes now for that cover to be blown. Elena felt a chill run through her. Milano's attack on Westbrook, you knew it was coming. We had intelligence suggesting a possible attempt, Warren admitted. What we didn't anticipate was your intervention. That wasn't in the profile. You used me as bait, she realized. And Westbrook too. We used resources available to us to flush out a significant threat. Warren's tone was unapologetic. Milano is connected to entities that pose a grave danger to national security. His interest in Westbrook provided an opportunity that nearly got us both killed, Elena said bitterly. Warren shrugged. Risk is inherent in our line of work. You of all people should remember that, Julia. The sound of her real name, a name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in nearly 10 years, sent a shiver through her. Julia Keller, NSA intelligence analyst specialized in Russian operations. The woman who had vanished after the Moscow disaster, leaving behind a cloud of suspicion and unanswered questions. What happens now? She asked. Now? Warren's expression became unreadable. Now you help us finish what began 10 years ago in Moscow. The game is still in play, Julia, and you've just become our most valuable piece again. As the convoy of vehicles moved through the forested roads, Elena caught a glimpse of the disabled sedan growing smaller in the distance. Westbrook stood watching their departure, his figure becoming a tiny silhouette against the mountain backdrop. For 5 years she had cleaned his home, served his meals, and faded into the background of his life. Now, in the space of 36 hours, she had saved him from assassins, fled with him, and been revealed as someone else entirely. She wondered if he felt as disoriented as she did. Director Collins will have questions, she said to Warren. I'm sure she will, he replied dismissively. Her agency has been kept in the dark about certain aspects of this operation. Compartmentalization was necessary. And Westbrook? He's still in danger. Mr. Westbrook will be protected, Warren assured her. His value to the intelligence community remains significant. But your value, Julia, has suddenly become much greater. As they approached what appeared to be a military airfield hidden in the mountains, Elena felt the weight of her past and present colliding. Elena Reyes had been a refuge, a simple life she had created to escape the complications and moral ambiguities of Julia Keller's existence. Now that refuge was gone, and Julia Keller would have to face the consequences of choices made long ago in a Moscow winter. The military transport plane hummed steadily as it cut through the night sky. Elena, or Julia, as she was struggling to think of herself again, sat across from Agent Warren, her wrists still bound by the restraints they'd placed on her during the mountain capture. You look tired, Warren observed, studying her face in the dim cabin light. 10 years on the run will do that, she replied, her voice containing an edge she'd suppressed for years as Elena Reyes. Warren smiled thinly. You weren't on the run, Julia. You were in storage. The casual cruelty of the statement hung in the air. Julia watched the man who had once been her handler, noting the deeper lines around his eyes, the additional gray at his temples. 8 years had aged him, but the cold calculation in his gaze remained unchanged. Where are you taking me? She finally asked. A secure facility outside of D.C. Warren checked his watch. We'll be briefing the director in 6 hours. I suggest you use this time to reorient yourself to your real identity. Julia looked down at her hands, the hands of a housekeeper now, with calluses and small scars from years of domestic work. Elena Reyes's hands. Yet they had moved with Julia Keller's training when the gunfire started. Why now? She asked. If you've known where I was for years, why extract me now? Warren considered her question. Milano made his move against Westbrook. That accelerated our timeline. That's not an answer. It's all you get for now. Warren leaned back in his seat. What I'm more interested in is why you saved Westbrook. Your profile indicated you'd prioritize self-preservation, slip away during the chaos, disappear again. Instead, you risked exposure to warn him. Julia met his gaze steadily. He's a good man. He didn't deserve to die. The Julia Keller I knew didn't make decisions based on who deserved what, Warren countered. She was coldly pragmatic. Survival above all. Maybe I changed. Nobody changes that fundamentally. Warren's eyes narrowed, which makes me wonder what else might have changed. Where your loyalties truly lie now. Before Julia could respond, a secure phone buzzed at Warren's hip. He answered it, his expression shifting subtly as he listened to the caller. Understood. We'll adjust accordingly. He ended the call and fixed Julia with a hard stare. It seems Director Collins is raising quite a fuss about your extraction. Apparently Westbrook has been making calls. Something warm and unexpected flickered in Julia's chest. He's worried about me? He's demanding answers about who has been cleaning his house and serving his coffee for 5 years. Warren corrected. The man has trust issues, understandably. A young analyst approached with a tablet. Sir, we've received the Moscow file clearance. Full access granted per the director's orders. Warren took the tablet, entered a complex password and slid it across to Julia. Time to refresh your memory. The screen displayed a classified operation file labeled Chimera. Julia's breath caught as images flooded the display. Surveillance photos, intelligence reports, and mission briefings from the operation that had ended her career and sent her into hiding. Moscow, 2015. Warren narrated unnecessarily. A joint NSA-CIA operation to infiltrate a suspected Russian intelligence front operating under the guise of an energy consortium. Your mission was to identify key players, particularly an American asset believed to be feeding classified technology information to the Russians. Julia swiped through the familiar documents, memories rising like ghosts. The operation was compromised. 3 agents dead, Warren continued. 2 Russian assets eliminated. And you, the intelligence analyst who wasn't even supposed to be in the field, disappeared during the extraction. No body, no communication, just gone. You thought I defected, Julia stated flatly. The evidence was suggestive, Warren replied. You had access to the complete asset list. You disappeared right when the operation went sideways. Some of your colleagues made certain assumptions. Julia looked up from the tablet. And what did you assume, Warren? I kept an open mind. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Which is why when facial recognition flagged you working as a housekeeper for a high-value intelligence asset 3 years later, I didn't immediately have you black-bagged and disappeared to a site in Romania. The casual mention of rendition sent a chill through her. This was the world she had fled, where people vanished into black sites, where moral calculus reduced human lives to asset values. So instead you watched me, she concluded. Why? Warren tapped the tablet. Because of him. The screen changed to display a familiar face, Victor Milano, the man who had tried to kill Westbrook. Milano was in Moscow during the Chimera operation, Warren explained. Not as a target. He wasn't on our radar then. He was working as a middleman for several international financial organizations with ties to Russian oligarchs. Julia studied the file, her analyst's mind automatically connecting threads that had been obscured 8 years ago. He was laundering money for the same consortium we were investigating. Precisely. Warren nodded with grudging approval. When Milano suddenly developed an interest in Alexander Westbrook's business operations 6 months ago, it raised flags. Westbrook has been helping us track financial crimes for years, but this connection to our old Moscow operation was too significant to ignore. And somehow I fit into this, Julia said, the pieces beginning to align in her mind. You're the only surviving field operative with direct knowledge of the Moscow players, Warren confirmed. We needed to know if Milano's interest in Westbrook was connected to Chimera. When he made his move, we decided it was time to bring you back in. Julia set down the tablet, her thoughts racing. The night of the attack, you could have warned Westbrook, prevented the whole thing. We could have, Warren agreed with a shrug. But then we wouldn't have seen how the players moved. Who was connected to whom? Sometimes you have to let the first moves play out to understand the game. People could have died, Julia said, anger finally breaking through her careful control. Westbrook could have died. But he didn't, Warren countered. Thanks to you. An outcome we considered. Possible, if unlikely. The realization struck her with cold clarity. You weren't just watching me all these years. You placed me with Westbrook deliberately. I was never randomly assigned to his household. Warren's silence was confirmation enough. The employment agency, Julia continued, the pieces falling into place. The background check that somehow missed the flaws in my false identity. The reference from the 4 seasons that I never actually worked for. It was all you. We needed someone close to Westbrook, Warren finally admitted. Someone with training who could recognize threats but wouldn't be obvious. The perfect invisible guardian. A housekeeper with counterintelligence experience. Julia felt as if the plane's altitude had suddenly dropped, her stomach lurching with the revelation. 5 years, Warren, you left me in place for 5 years. Left. Westbrook's work makes him a target from multiple directions. Having unacknowledged security in his household proved valuable on several occasions, though this is the first time you've had to act so. Dramatically. The casual manipulation of her life, Years spent in a role she had thought was her own choice left Julia shaken. Even her escape had been an illusion, a gilded cage she had mistaken for freedom. "Does Westbrook know?" she asked. "That I was placed with him?" "No," Warren replied. "That particular detail remains classified. As far as he's concerned, his housekeeper just happened to be an NSA analyst who disappeared after a botched operation." Julia processed this information, wondering how Westbrook would react to learning the full truth, that the woman who had saved his life had been secretly assigned to watch over him for years. "What does Milano want with Westbrook?" she asked, refocusing on the immediate threat. Warren's expression grew serious. "That's what you're going to help us determine. Milano has been working with a group we've been tracking since Moscow, former intelligence operatives from various agencies who've gone private. They call themselves Daedalus, a labyrinth builder," Julia noted, "appropriate for people who create complex networks. They specialize in financial engineering for criminal organizations, terrorist groups, and hostile state actors," Warren explained. "Money laundering so sophisticated it's nearly untraceable. Westbrook's financial intelligence work has helped us disrupt some of their operations, though he wasn't aware of the specific connection to Daedalus. And now they want him eliminated," Julia concluded. "That's our working theory. But Milano's attack seemed rushed, improvised. It suggests they're operating on an accelerated timeline. We need to know why." The plane began its descent, the change in pressure making Julia's ears pop. Through the small window, she could see the lights of what appeared to be a private airfield. "What happens after the briefing?" she asked. "That depends on you," Warren replied. "Cooperate fully, help us take down Milano and identify his Daedalus connections, and perhaps we can discuss a formalized reintegration." "And if I refuse?" Warren's smile was cold. "There's a reason we're not landing at Andrews Air Force Base, Julia. Official channels can be so restricting when dealing with potential security compromises." The threat was clear: help willingly or disappear into a black site. Julia had few illusions about the options available to someone in her position. As the plane touched down, a new thought struck her. "What about Westbrook? Is he safe?" "He's been moved to a secure location," Warren assured her. "Director Collins is personally overseeing his protection now." "Collins doesn't know about my placement with Westbrook, does she?" Julia guessed. "Your operation wasn't coordinated with her team." Warren's slight hesitation confirmed her suspicion. "Interagency cooperation has its limits. Need-to-know basis. She's going to be furious when she finds out you've been running an unauthorized asset in her operation." "Let me worry about Director Collins," Warren said dismissively. "Your concern should be convincing the NSA director that you're not the traitor many believe you to be." The plane came to a complete stop. Through the window, Julia could see black SUVs waiting on the tarmac, their headlights illuminating a group of armed personnel standing at attention. As the cabin door opened and cold night air rushed in, Julia felt a sense of resignation. Elena Reyes was gone forever now, her simple existence exchanged for the complicated reality of Julia Keller's return to a world of shadows and half-truths. The restraints were removed from her wrists as she rose to follow Warren. "One last question," she said as they approached the door. "The night of the attack, did you know Milano would move against Westbrook then?" Warren paused, looking back at her with an inscrutable expression. "We had indicators suggesting imminent action. The dinner meeting raised flags." "But you didn't warn him," Julia pressed. "Sometimes to catch the bigger predators you need appropriate bait," Warren replied unapologetically. "Westbrook has always understood the risks of his arrangement with us. And me? Was I just another piece of bait in your operation?" Warren studied her for a long moment. "You were a ghost, Julia. A potentially compromised agent who vanished under suspicious circumstances. The fact that you proved useful as Westbrook's protector was a fortunate development. And now you're a resource with unique knowledge of both Moscow and Milano." Warren gestured toward the waiting vehicles. "Your value has increased substantially. Don't squander this opportunity to rehabilitate your reputation." As they descended the stairs to the tarmac, Julia thought about Westbrook, the man she had observed silently for years, whose life she had saved, who now knew her only as a lie. She wondered what he was thinking now, if he felt betrayed by the revelation of her true identity, if he would ever trust her again. Not that it mattered. Julia Keller and Alexander Westbrook now occupied different worlds again, he in the realm of high finance and civilian intelligence cooperation, she back in the shadowy domain of professional espionage. Their paths had crossed briefly, dramatically, and now diverged once more. Or so she thought. A commotion near the line of vehicles drew her attention. One of the SUV doors opened and a familiar figure emerged, arguing intensely with a security officer. "That's not possible," Warren muttered beside her, reaching for his phone. But it was unmistakably Alexander Westbrook striding across the tarmac, Director Collins at his side, both moving with clear purpose toward Julia and Warren. "It seems," Julia observed with the first genuine smile since her capture, "that your compartmentalization has some leaks, Warren." Warren's face hardened as Westbrook approached. "This is a classified extraction, Mr. Westbrook. You don't have clearance to be here." "Actually," Collins interjected, her silver hair gleaming under the airfield lights, "the President disagrees. As of 20 minutes ago, this operation has been placed under joint jurisdiction." She handed Warren a document bearing the presidential seal. "Mr. Westbrook's unique insights into both the Milano threat and Ms. Keller's behavior have been deemed essential to national security." Warren scanned the document, his expression darkening. "This is highly irregular. So is placing an unauthorized operative in my assets household for 5 years without notification," Collins replied coldly. "We'll discuss that breach of protocol separately." Westbrook's eyes found Julia's, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Julia," he said, testing her real name for the first time. "Alexander," she replied simply. He studied her face as if seeing her for the first time. "It seems we have a great deal to discuss." "Yes," she agreed. "I believe we do." The secure facility outside Washington, D.C. resembled a corporate office building from the outside, a deliberate architectural deception. Inside, beyond multiple security checkpoints, the true nature of the building revealed itself: reinforced doors, surveillance systems, and the unmistakable presence of armed personnel. Julia sat in a sterile conference room, a cup of untouched coffee cooling before her. The walls were a bland gray, the furniture utilitarian, designed to provide no distraction, no comfort. She had been in rooms like this before, on the other side of the table, debriefing assets and suspects alike. Now she was the one being evaluated. The door opened and Director Collins entered, followed by Westbrook and, reluctantly it seemed, Warren. Collins placed a tablet on the table and took a seat across from Julia. "Ms. Keller," she began formally. "Or do you prefer Elena still?" "Julia is fine," she replied, meeting the director's gaze steadily. "Elena doesn't exist anymore." "She never did," Warren muttered, earning a sharp look from Collins. "Let's establish some ground rules," Collins continued. "This is not an interrogation in the formal sense. Given the circumstances and the potential threat to multiple operations, the President has authorized a joint task force approach." She gestured to Westbrook. "Mr. Westbrook's financial intelligence work has proven invaluable in tracking Daedalus. His insights, combined with your first-hand knowledge of the Moscow operation and Milano's current activities, represent our best chance of untangling this situation." Julia glanced at Westbrook, who had remained standing, his expression guarded. "I'll cooperate however I can." "Good," Collins nodded. "Let's start with the obvious question. What happened in Moscow?" Julia took a deep breath. This was the moment she had dreaded for 8 years, the accounting for her actions that night in Russia. "The official report indicates that the operation was compromised by an information leak," she began carefully. "That's partially true, but incomplete." Warren leaned forward. "Enlighten us." "The operation wasn't just compromised, it was deliberately sabotaged from within our own team," Julia stated. "When I discovered this, I realized that returning through official channels would likely result in my elimination." "That's a serious allegation," Collins said. "What evidence did you have?" "Communications intercepts that weren't in the official record," Julia replied. "During my analysis support role, I identified pattern anomalies in our secure communications. Someone was transmitting operation details to an unauthorized receiver." "Why didn't you report this through proper channels?" Warren demanded. Julia fixed him with a steady gaze. "Because the transmission signature matched your secure line, Warren." The accusation hung in the air. Westbrook shifted his position slightly, eyes moving between Warren and Julia. "That's absurd," Warren scoffed, though Julia noticed his right hand tightening almost imperceptibly. "If you had such evidence, where is it now?" "I secured it before I disappeared," Julia replied calmly. "Insurance against exactly this kind of situation." Collins studied her thoughtfully. "And yet you never came forward with this alleged evidence, even when you could have cleared your name." "Coming forward would have meant exposing myself to the very people I believed had compromised the operation," Julia explained. I made the calculation that disappearing was safer than risking elimination. Convenient, Warren commented dryly. Actually, Westbrook spoke for the first time, it's entirely logical. If she believed high-level NSA personnel were compromised, official channels would have been potentially deadly. Julia felt a surprising rush of gratitude at his support. Exactly. So I created Elena Reyes and disappeared, only to end up working in my household, Westbrook noted. An interesting coincidence. Julia met his eyes. Not a coincidence at all, as I've recently learned. Ask Warren about Operation Guardian. Collins turned to Warren sharply. What is she talking about? Warren's expression remained neutral, but Julia could see the calculation behind his eyes. A compartmentalized protective operation, non-standard protocols. You planted her in my household, Westbrook stated flatly, without informing me or Director Collins. We identified a security vulnerability in your domestic staff rotation, Warren admitted reluctantly. Given Ms. Keller's specific skill set and her unique situation, it presented an opportunity for discreet additional protection. Collins's face had hardened to granite. You ran an unauthorized operative within my assets household for 5 years, without notification to either me or the Oversight Committee? National security required flexibility, Warren replied unapologetically. The arrangement proved effective, as evidenced by Mr. Westbrook's survival of Milano's attack. Westbrook turned to Julia, his expression a mixture of anger and something harder to identify. Did you know that you were placed with me deliberately? No, Julia answered truthfully. I believed I had successfully disappeared. I chose domestic service because it's largely invisible work. People don't look closely at the person cleaning their house. The agency placement was legitimate as far as I knew. She's telling the truth, Warren confirmed unexpectedly. Her effectiveness depended on her believing she had escaped. A conscious operative might have revealed themselves. So you manipulated us both, Westbrook concluded, his voice tight with controlled anger. I protected a valuable intelligence asset, Warren corrected. Successfully, I might add. Collins cut through the tension. We'll address these protocol violations separately, Agent Warren. For now, let's focus on the immediate threat. Julia, what can you tell us about Milano's connection to Daedalus? Recognizing the shift back to the operational focus, Julia gathered her thoughts. Milano was a peripheral figure in Moscow, primarily handling financial transactions for the consortium we were investigating. Based on what I've seen of his current operation, he's moved up significantly in the Daedalus hierarchy. Our intelligence suggests the same, Collins agreed, pulling up files on her tablet. Milano has expanded from money laundering to what appears to be a coordination role between Daedalus and several hostile intelligence services, which explains his interest in eliminating me, Westbrook added. My work with financial intelligence units has disrupted several of their operations. Not just disrupted, Warren interjected. Mr. Westbrook's analysis led directly to the seizure of approximately $3 billion in Daedalus-connected assets over the past 18 months. Julia considered this information. That kind of financial damage would certainly motivate retaliation, but the timing seems significant. Why move against Westbrook now after years of his cooperation with intelligence agencies? Collins nodded approvingly at the analytical question. That's precisely what we need to determine. Daedalus operations have historically been patient and methodical. This attack was rushed, almost desperate. Something has changed in their operational environment, Julia concluded. They need Westbrook eliminated quickly, which suggests he represents an imminent threat to something specific, not just his general counter-financial crime work. Westbrook's expression shifted as a realization dawned. The Artemis Protocol. Collins tensed visibly. That's highly classified, Alexander. And directly relevant, he countered. If Milano is connected to Daedalus, and Daedalus is accelerating operations against me specifically, Artemis is the most logical target. Warren leaned forward with renewed interest. Artemis is scheduled for implementation when? 30 days, Collins replied reluctantly. The International Banking Coalition signed off last week. Julia looked between them, connecting dots. Artemis is some kind of financial monitoring system? Westbrook nodded. A new international protocol for tracking suspicious financial transactions across borders. I've been consulting on its development for 3 years. Once implemented, it will make the kind of large-scale money laundering Daedalus specializes in significantly more difficult. If they know about Artemis, Julia reasoned, they'd be highly motivated to disrupt it before implementation. Eliminating its key architect would cause delays at minimum, or give them time to identify workarounds, Warren added. Collins turned to Julia with evaluating eyes. Your analytical skills remain sharp, despite years away from the field. I never stopped analyzing, Julia replied simply. Working in Westbrook's household gave me access to fragments of information. Conversations, visitors, patterns. Old habits die hard. Those habits saved my life, Westbrook acknowledged, his tone softening slightly. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young analyst entered, handing Collins a tablet with new information. Her expression darkened as she reviewed it. Milano has been located, she announced. Facial recognition picked him up at a private airfield in Virginia 3 hours ago. He's in the wind now, but traveling with at least 6 known Daedalus operatives. They're moving operations domestic side, Warren concluded. Bringing in their specialized team suggests they're planning something more sophisticated than the direct attack on Westbrook's estate. I need to get back to my financial team, Westbrook said. If they're shifting strategies, we need to anticipate their next move. Collins shook her head. You're still a primary target, Alexander. Until we neutralize this threat, you remain under protection. With all respect, Director, I can't effectively analyze financial movements from a secure bunker, Westbrook argued. My systems, my team, can be accessed remotely, Collins interrupted firmly. Your security takes priority. Julia watched this exchange with growing unease. Something about Milano's movements felt wrong, too obvious, too predictable for an operator of his caliber. He wants you to see him, she said suddenly. All three turned to her. Explain, Collins demanded. Milano is too experienced to be caught by standard facial recognition unless he wants to be, Julia reasoned. He's drawing attention deliberately, creating a focal point while the real operation happens elsewhere. Warren looked skeptical. That's speculation. It's pattern analysis, Julia countered. I watched Milano operate during dinner at Westbrook's estate. He's theatrical, strategic, he creates distractions. The dinner itself was a distraction from the real assault team coming through the garden. Westbrook nodded slowly. She's right. Milano deliberately engaged me in conversation about the Petrov contracts. He mentioned them specifically to gauge my reaction. The Virginia sighting is a decoy, Julia insisted. Whatever they're planning is already in motion somewhere else. Collins considered this assessment. Where would you look if you were still an NSA analyst, Julia? Follow the financial movements, she replied immediately. Milano specializes in money manipulation. Major operational shifts require resource reallocation. Westbrook straightened. My team has been tracking unusual cryptocurrency movements for the past 72 hours. Significant amounts being consolidated from previously dormant wallets. That's operational preparation, Julia confirmed. They're positioning resources for whatever comes next. Collins made a decision. Warren, coordinate with cybersecurity to intensify monitoring of the crypto patterns Westbrook's team has identified. I want satellite coverage of all locations associated with known Daedalus personnel. She turned to Julia. Ms. Keller, given your unique insights into both Milano's methods and Mr. Westbrook's operation, I'm temporarily reinstating your analytical clearance. You'll work directly with Westbrook to identify potential targets and vulnerabilities. Warren started to protest. Director, reinstating a compromised, is my decision to make. Collins cut him off sharply. The President has authorized extraordinary measures, and I'm exercising that authority. She fixed Warren with a hard stare. Unless you'd prefer I exercise that authority to launch a full investigation into Operation Guardian and your Moscow communications immediately. The implicit threat hung in the air. Warren's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. As you wish, Director. Collins turned back to Julia and Westbrook. You'll be moved to a secure analysis facility where you can access the necessary systems. I expect continuous updates on any patterns or conclusions you identify. As they prepared to leave, Westbrook caught Julia's arm. We still have much to discuss about your placement in my household. I know, she acknowledged quietly. I'm sorry for the deception even if I wasn't fully aware of it myself. His expression softened slightly. You saved my life, whatever your name is. That buys you the benefit of the doubt, at least for now. As they were escorted from the conference room, Julia felt the weight of her dual identity pressing on her. Elena Reyes had been a refuge, a simple existence free from the moral complexities and dangers of intelligence work. Julia Keller was now thrust back into a world of shadows and calculation, where trust was a tactical resource rather than an emotional reality. Yet as she walked beside Westbrook toward whatever came next, she realized that perhaps for the first time in 8 years, she was truly herself again. Neither entirely the dutiful housekeeper nor the hardened intelligence analyst, but something new forged from both experiences. The secure vehicle waited for them outside, its engine humming with quiet efficiency. As they approached, Julia's trained eye caught a subtle inconsistency. The driver's posture was too rigid, his hands positioned incorrectly on the wheel. Without thinking, she grabbed Westbrook's arm, pulling him back just as the driver's window lowered and the unmistakable barrel of a silenced weapon emerged. "Down!" she shouted, tackling Westbrook to the ground as the first shot whispered past them. The infiltration had already begun. Security alarms blared across the facility as Julia covered Westbrook's body with her own. The silenced weapon fired twice more, bullets striking the concrete where they had stood seconds before. From her position on the ground, Julia caught a glimpse of the false driver's face. Young, expressionless, professional. Agency security personnel responded instantly, converging on the compromised vehicle with precision. 3 shots rang out from defensive positions, striking the assailant through the open window. Julia kept Westbrook pinned until she confirmed the threat was neutralized. "Are you hit?" she asked urgently, already running her hands across his shoulders and torso, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," Westbrook replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. "How did you know?" "His hands on the wheel," Julia explained as she helped him to his feet. Agency drivers maintain a specific grip position. His was wrong. Collins rushed toward them, her normally composed demeanor replaced by cold fury. "Get them inside. Full lockdown protocols." A tactical team surrounded them, creating a human shield as they were hustled back into the building. Through the closing doors, Julia could see additional security units swarming the area, weapons drawn as they secured the perimeter. In the facility's emergency operations center, Collins barked orders to her staff while security footage of the attack played on multiple screens. How the hell did a Daedalus operative infiltrate a secure NSA transport? She demanded of no one in particular. Warren entered, his face grim. Initial ID confirms the shooter was Alexei Volkov, former FSB, known Daedalus contractor. He obtained authentic credentials and uniform. Impossible without inside help, Collins concluded, voicing what everyone was thinking. The implications hung heavy in the air. Daedalus had penetrated their security at the highest levels. No one in the room could be fully trusted. "This proves my theory," Julia said quietly to Westbrook as they stood slightly apart from the others. The Virginia sighting was a deliberate misdirection. They already had an operative in place here. Westbrook nodded, his expression thoughtful despite the recent attempt on his life. "Which means they know about Artemis in detail, not just its existence, but exactly who's involved and where. And they know about me," Julia added. "My extraction from your protection wasn't as classified as Warren thought." Collins approached them, her voice low and intense. "We're compromised at multiple levels. I'm initiating Black Shield protocols. Communications blackout, skeleton staff only, independent secure systems." She handed Westbrook a specialized tablet. "This runs on an air-gapped network. Your financial analysis team has uploaded the latest cryptocurrency tracking data. I need you both to find the pattern while we deal with the security breach." "Director?" Julia began hesitantly. "If Daedalus has compromised agency personnel, how can we be sure anyone here is clean?" "We can't," Collins acknowledged bluntly. "Which is why you two will be working in isolation. Trust no one but each other until we verify security." The statement struck Julia as ironic. Just days ago, she had been living a lie in Westbrook's home. Now they were being told to trust only each other in a life-or-death situation. They were escorted to a secure analysis room, essentially a vault with computer terminals, designed for handling the most sensitive intelligence. The heavy door sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, the electronic lock engaging automatically. "Alone at last," Westbrook said dryly, breaking the tension. "Though under slightly different circumstances than I might have imagined." Julia raised an eyebrow. "You imagined being alone with your housekeeper?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I meant alone with an NSA analyst who's been spying on me for 5 years. Not spying," Julia corrected, moving to the main terminal. "Protecting. There's a difference." "Is there?" Westbrook joined her at the computer station. "You observed my daily routines, my business dealings, my personal habits, all without my knowledge or consent." Julia turned to face him fully. "Yes, and because I did, you're alive right now. Twice over." They stared at each other for a long moment. the accumulated tension of their unusual relationship hanging between them. Finally, Westbrook nodded slightly. "Fair point," he conceded. "Let's focus on why Daedalus wants me dead so urgently." They turned their attention to the financial data on the secure tablet. Westbrook quickly navigated through the complex tracking system his team had developed, displaying visualization maps of cryptocurrency movements across global exchanges. Here, he pointed to a cluster of transactions. Approximately 72 hours ago, Daedalus began consolidating assets from these distributed wallets. Over $300 million moved through 17 different cryptocurrencies, eventually landing here. He indicated a single digital wallet address. Julia studied the pattern. That's preparation for something major. Operational funding on this scale suggests they're not just targeting you anymore. They're accelerating a much larger initiative. "Agreed," Westbrook said. "But what's the target?" They worked in focused silence for the next hour, Julia falling easily into her old analytical mindset, while Westbrook applied his unparalleled understanding of financial systems. The combination proved remarkably effective. "These transaction pathways," Julia noted, highlighting a series of movements. "They mirror traditional money laundering structures, but with a specific geographical focus." Westbrook leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers as he studied her findings. "Singapore, Frankfurt, London, all major banking hubs." "The timing is the key," Julia realized, pulling up a calendar. "These consolidations are happening precisely 30 days before Artemis implementation." Westbrook's expression darkened as understanding dawned. "They're not trying to stop Artemis. They're exploiting its implementation timeline." "Explain," Julia prompted. "Artemis creates a new international standard for tracking suspicious transactions," Westbrook explained rapidly. "But for approximately 72 hours during implementation, the global banking system will transition between protocols." Julia grasped the implications immediately, creating a brief window where neither the old nor new monitoring systems will be fully operational. "Exactly," Westbrook confirmed grimly. "Daedalus isn't trying to prevent Artemis. They're planning to exploit the transition window to move massive amounts of money undetected. The ultimate money laundering opportunity," Julia murmured. "Billions could disappear into untraceable accounts during that window. But only if they know the exact implementation sequence," Westbrook added, "which is classified at the highest levels." Julia met his eyes. "Yet another indication. They have someone inside with top-level access." The secure phone on the wall chirped, startling them both. Julia answered cautiously. "Ms. Keller, Director Collins is requesting an update." The voice on the other end stated formally. "We've identified a potential target," Julia replied. "Daedalus appears to be positioning for a major financial operation during the Artemis transition window. The director will be there in 5 minutes to review your findings," the caller informed her before disconnecting. Julia replaced the receiver, a sense of unease growing. "Something doesn't feel right." "What do you mean?" Westbrook asked. Collins initiated Black Shield protocols. "Minimal communications, skeleton staff only," Julia recalled. "Yet someone just called requesting information on our progress." Westbrook's expression turned serious. "Could be standard procedure under the circumstances. Or it could be someone fishing for information," Julia countered. She moved to the door, examining the security panel. "This room should be sealed under Black Shield. No one should have authorization to enter without emergency override." "You think it's another infiltration attempt," Westbrook realized. Julia nodded grimly. "We need to assume the worst." She glanced around the room, assessing options. The ventilation system, standard design, includes an emergency maintenance access point. Westbrook looked skeptical. "You want us to escape through the air ducts? That seems rather dramatic." "Do you have a better suggestion?" Julia challenged. "If I'm wrong, we apologize for the paranoia. If I'm right." She let the implication hang. Westbrook considered for only a moment before nodding. "Lead the way." Julia quickly located the ventilation access panel and removed it with practiced efficiency. 5 years as a housekeeper taught me more than just how to polish silver," she explained at Westbrook's surprised expression. "I know every maintenance system in buildings like this." She helped him into the narrow shaft first, then followed, replacing the panel behind them. The metal duct was cramped but navigable, designed for maintenance access to the secure room's isolated air system. "Where exactly are we going?" Westbrook whispered as they crawled through the confined space. "Emergency exit route," Julia replied softly. "Standard secure facility design includes at least one unmonitored evacuation path, if I'm right about the layout." They turned at a junction. continuing for several more yards before Julia stopped at another access panel. Through the slats, they could see an unmarked corridor with minimal security features, exactly what she had expected. "Wait," she cautioned, listening carefully. The faint sound of footsteps approached, then receded. Once certain the corridor was clear, she removed the panel and dropped silently to the floor, motioning for Westbrook to follow. "The emergency exit should be at the end of this hallway," she explained as they moved quickly and quietly through the unmarked passage. "It bypasses standard security to ensure evacuation during system failures." As they rounded the final corner, Julia froze, pulling Westbrook back against the wall. Ahead, 2 men in security uniforms stood guard at the emergency exit, an obvious protocol violation. "That confirms it," she whispered. "Under Black Shield, this exit should be unguarded to ensure evacuation options remain open." "So those aren't real security," Westbrook concluded. "No, and we can't go back the way we came." Julia assessed their options rapidly. "We need a diversion." Westbrook surprised her by taking the lead. "I have an idea. Wait here." Before she could protest, he slipped away toward a nearby utility panel she hadn't noticed. Using his clearance code, Westbrook accessed the controls and initiated what appeared to be a maintenance sequence. Seconds later, alarms blared throughout the corridor. The false guards reacted immediately, speaking urgently into their communications devices. As they momentarily looked away from the exit, Julia and Westbrook made their move, slipping past them and through the emergency door into the facility's outer perimeter. "Fire suppression test sequence," Westbrook explained as they hurried across the grounds toward the vehicle staging area. "Scheduled monthly, but can be manually triggered. They'll assume it's a system malfunction." "Impressive," Julia acknowledged. "You've picked up a few things yourself over the years." They reached the vehicle area, now largely deserted due to the facility lockdown. Julia quickly identified an unmarked sedan with keys left in the ignition. Standard procedure for emergency evacuation vehicles. "Can you still drive?" Westbrook asked as she slid into the driver's seat. "Or was that part of your cover too?" "Some skills never leave you," Julia replied, starting the engine. "Like how to identify when someone's trying to kill you. Twice in one day is pushing it, even for us." As they accelerated away from the facility, Westbrook used the secure tablet to contact Director Collins directly through an encrypted emergency channel. "Alexander?" Collins's voice came through clearly. "Where are you? Security reported you and Keller missing from the analysis room." "We've left the facility," Westbrook explained. "Someone impersonating your staff contacted us requesting information, then announced you were coming to our location. A clear protocol violation under Black Shield." Collins was silent for a moment. "You were right to leave. The breach is worse than we thought. Warren's been detained for questioning. His communications during the Moscow operation have been confirmed as compromised." "Warren?" Julia couldn't hide her shock despite her suspicions from years ago. "He's working with Daedalus?" "Unclear at this point," Collins replied. "But his access codes were used to admit the false driver who attempted to kill you. We're working on the assumption that he's either compromised or directly involved. We've identified Daedalus's likely strategy," Westbrook interjected, bringing them back to the immediate threat. "They're positioning for a massive financial operation during the Artemis transition window. That's 3 days from now," Collins noted with alarm. "The implementation schedule was only finalized last week in a closed session, which confirms they have access at the highest levels," Julia concluded. "Director, Daedalus isn't trying to stop Artemis. They're planning to exploit it." "Where are you heading now?" Collins asked. Westbrook and Julia exchanged glances. "Somewhere Milano wouldn't expect," Julia answered. "Somewhere without agency connections that might be compromised." "My private residence in Maryland," Westbrook decided. "It's not in my name and only a handful of people know about it. We'll continue our analysis there and send you secure updates." "Agreed," Collins said after brief consideration. "I'm assigning a clean team for your protection. Personnel who've been isolated from central operations. Authentication protocol Sierra Echo 7. "Understood," Julia confirmed. "We'll check in once secure." The call ended, leaving them alone with the gravity of their situation. Julia drove with practiced precision, taking an indirect route toward Maryland while constantly checking for signs of surveillance. "So," Westbrook said after several minutes of silence, "Julia Keller, former NSA intelligence analyst specializing in financial crimes and Russian operations, presumed defector or dead for 8 years. Now my best hope for staying alive." He shook his head slightly. "Quite a promotion from housekeeper." Despite everything, Julia smiled faintly. I was an excellent housekeeper. The best I've ever had, Westbrook agreed, though I'm beginning to understand why my silver was always so precisely arranged. Optimal positions for monitoring the dining room. Force of habit, Julia admitted. Though I did take pride in the actual housekeeping too. They lapsed into silence again as Julia navigated through increasingly rural areas, eventually turning onto a private road that wound through dense forest. After nearly a mile, a modern yet understated house came into view, glass and natural stone blending seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. "Welcome to my actual home," Westbrook said as they approached, "as opposed to the showcase estate where I conduct business." Julia parked the car in a concealed garage built into the hillside. "It suits you better than the mansion," she observed. "Less ostentatious. You sound surprised. The Alexander Westbrook who hosts business dinners in marble dining rooms seems quite different from the man who prefers this." Julia gestured to the simple elegance of the hidden retreat. "Perhaps you don't know me as well as 5 years of observation might suggest," he replied, a hint of challenge in his voice. As they entered the house, Julia felt the strange dissonance of their reversed roles. She the protector now openly acknowledged. He the one leading her into his private domain. For years, she had moved invisibly through his spaces. Now she walked beside him as an equal. The interior was surprisingly modest for a billionaire's residence. Comfortable but not extravagant, with natural materials and clean lines. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the surrounding forest while advanced security systems hummed discreetly in the background. "We should continue our analysis while waiting for Colin's team," Westbrook suggested, moving toward a home office area. Julia followed, still processing the rapid evolution of their relationship. "Alexander," she began hesitantly, "I owe you an explanation about who I was before Elena Reyes." He turned to face her. "Yes, you do. But right now we have approximately 72 hours before Daedalus executes what appears to be the largest financial crime in history. Personal revelations will have to wait." Julia nodded, acknowledging the priority. They settled into the workspace, reconnecting the secure tablet to Westbrook's private systems. As night fell outside the panoramic windows, they continued analyzing the cryptocurrency patterns, identifying likely targets within the global banking system. The familiar rhythm of analytical work created an unexpected intimacy between them. The shared focus, the completion of each other's thoughts, the mutual recognition of critical insights. "Look at this," Westbrook said suddenly, highlighting a pattern Julia had missed. "These transactions aren't just positioning funds, they're testing security protocols at specific banks." Julia leaned closer, their shoulders touching as she studied the data. "They're probing for weaknesses in the pre-Artemis systems, identifying exactly where to strike when the window opens. If they succeed," Westbrook continued, "they could potentially divert billions in assets to untraceable accounts. Money that funds terrorism, human trafficking, weapons proliferation. Then we don't let them succeed," Julia said simply. Their eyes met in the dim light of the computer screens, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. Whatever complications existed in their past, and whatever uncertain future awaited them, this present moment had absolute clarity. They would stop Daedalus together. A security alert chimed softly from Westbrook's system. "Vehicle approaching," he noted, checking the perimeter cameras. On screen, a black SUV with government plates moved slowly up the private drive, stopping at the security gate. "Colin's team?" Julia suggested. "Let's find out." Westbrook activated the gate's communication system. "Identify yourselves." "Clean Team Sierra Echo 7, came the response. "Sent by Director Collins for your protection." Julia tensed slightly. "The authentication seems correct." "Yes," Westbrook agreed, his finger hovering over the gate release. But so did the credentials of the false driver earlier today. They exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. If the approaching team was legitimate, they needed the protection. If not, "I have an idea," Julia said. "Let them in, but direct them to the guest house 50 yards east of the main residence. We'll observe their protocols from a safe distance first." Westbrook nodded, impressed by the strategy. If they're really Collins people, they'll follow standard security procedures. And if they're not, Julia added grimly, we'll know before they're on top of us. As Westbrook gave the directions to the approaching team, Julia moved to a hidden panel in the office wall, revealing a small arsenal of weapons. Westbrook raised his eyebrows in surprise. "A billionaire with intelligence connections needs protection," she explained, selecting a compact handgun and checking its magazine. especially one who helps take down international criminal organizations. You knew about this? Westbrook asked, gesturing to the hidden compartment. I clean very thoroughly, Julia replied with the faintest smile. But I never touched your security systems. Professional courtesy. As they watched the SUV divert toward the guest house, Julia handed Westbrook a weapon. Their fingers brushed during the exchange. A brief moment of contact that seemed to acknowledge the strange intimacy of their situation. Housemaid and employer, protector and protected, now allies against a common threat. Whatever happens next, Westbrook said quietly. I'm glad it was you, Julia. All these years in my house, watching over things. So am I, she admitted, though I never imagined it would end quite like this. Who said anything about ending? Westbrook responded, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected warmth. I'd say we're just getting to the interesting part. On the security monitor, the SUV parked outside the guest house. 4 armed personnel emerged, moving with the disciplined precision of professional security. Their leader spoke into a communications device, following what appeared to be standard protection protocols. They look legitimate, Julia observed cautiously. Yes, Westbrook agreed, but so did Milano at dinner. As night settled fully over the forest surrounding Westbrook's hidden sanctuary, they watched and waited, the billionaire and his unexpected guardian, ready to face whatever came next, together. 3 months later, Julia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Westbrook's Maryland home, watching autumn leaves drift across the property. The forest had transformed since that fateful night, summer green giving way to brilliant golds and reds, nature's reminder that change was the only constant. Behind her, voices drifted from the dining room where Director Collins was concluding a debrief with Westbrook. The Artemis operation had been a success, though not in the way anyone had anticipated. Ms. Keller, Collins appeared in the doorway. We're finished if you'd care to join us. Julia nodded, following the director back to where Westbrook sat reviewing documents. The dining table was covered with files, digital tablets, and coffee cups, evidence of their 3-hour meeting. As I was telling Alexander, Collins continued as they settled at the table, the president is extremely pleased with the outcome. The Daedalus network has been effectively dismantled, their financial infrastructure seized. And Milano? Julia asked. Currently enjoying the hospitality of a maximum security facility, Collins replied with satisfaction. His cooperation has been instrumental in identifying the remaining Daedalus operatives. Westbrook closed the file he'd been reviewing. And Warren? Collins's expression hardened slightly. Facing multiple charges of treason, conspiracy, and violation of intelligence protocols. His involvement with Daedalus appears to date back to before the Moscow operation. The evidence you preserved, Julia, proved critical to building the case against him. Julia nodded, feeling a complicated mixture of vindication and sadness. The thumb drive she had hidden years ago in Moscow, containing Warren's compromised communications, had finally served its purpose. The official record of the Moscow operation has been amended, Collins continued. Your status as a presumed defector has been officially cleared. The president has authorized a commendation for your actions both then and now. Thank you, Julia said simply. Collins gathered her materials, preparing to leave. Your reinstatement paperwork is processing. The agency would welcome your return, though I understand if you need time to consider your options. After Collins departed, escorted by her security detail, Julia and Westbrook were left alone in the sudden quiet of the house. The tension that had driven them for months, identifying Daedalus's targets, developing the counter-strategy, executing the operation that had ultimately trapped Milano during the Artemis implementation, had finally dissipated. So, Westbrook broke the silence. NSA analyst Julia Keller officially cleared and offered reinstatement. Apparently, she agreed, moving to pour fresh coffee for them both. And what will you do with this restored identity? He asked, accepting the cup she offered. Return to the intelligence community? Resume where you left off 8 years ago? Julia considered the question as she sat across from him. I'm not the same person I was then. 8 years as Elena Reyes changed me in ways I'm still discovering. How so? She met his gaze. Elena lived simply, quietly, finding satisfaction in work well done, in creating order from chaos on a small daily scale. Julia Keller was always looking for the next operation, the next threat to neutralize. She never stopped to appreciate the moments between crises. You speak of them as different people, Westbrook observed. In many ways they were, Julia acknowledged. But now I need to find out who I am when I'm neither hiding nor running, when I'm just myself. Westbrook studied her face, seeming to search for something in her expression. And who might that be? This new Julia? She smiled slightly. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I know she values her privacy, prefers direct action to endless analysis, and has developed an unexpected appreciation for simple pleasures. Like properly polished silver? Westbrook suggested with a hint of amusement. Among other things. Her smile widened briefly before turning serious again. What about you? Back to the world of high finance and covert intelligence cooperation? Westbrook leaned back in his chair. With Artemis fully implemented and Daedalus dismantled, my particular services are less critical than before. I find myself contemplating a change as well. The great Alexander Westbrook, considering retirement? Julia raised an eyebrow in surprise. Not retirement, he clarified. Redirection. My foundation's work in sustainable development has always been my true passion, using financial systems to create positive change rather than just preventing negative ones. I can see that. Julia nodded, recalling the environmental journals she'd noticed in his private study years ago, details observed but never mentioned during her time as his housekeeper. A comfortable silence fell between them, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. So much had happened since that stormy night, when Elena Reyes had whispered, "Stay quiet and don't move," and changed both their lives forever. They had worked side by side to identify Daedalus's plan, the massive financial heist timed to exploit the Artemis transition window. Together with Collins, they had developed the counter-strategy, appearing to accelerate the implementation timeline while actually creating a controlled vulnerability, a digital honeypot that had lured Milano and his operatives directly into a multinational law enforcement trap. Through it all, their unusual partnership had evolved into something neither could have anticipated. The boundaries between employer and employee, protector and protected, had dissolved, replaced by mutual respect and understanding that defied simple categorization. "I've been meaning to ask," Westbrook said, finally breaking the contemplative silence. "That night at the estate, when you saw the threat that no one else noticed, was that Elena the housekeeper or Julia the intelligence analyst?" She considered the question carefully. "Both, I think. Julia had the training to recognize the tactical patterns, but Elena had spent years observing the rhythms of your household, noticing what belonged and what didn't. Neither alone would have been enough." Westbrook nodded thoughtfully. "And now? Who will you be moving forward?" "Just me," she replied simply. "No more covers, no more divided existence, just myself." "And where will just yourself go from here?" he asked, the question carrying more weight than its casual delivery suggested. Julia met his gaze directly. "That depends partly on you." "Me?" Westbrook raised an eyebrow. "I've received several job offers since the operation concluded," she explained, "including one from a certain foundation focusing on sustainable development. Apparently, they're in need of a security consultant with both analytical skills and practical experience." Westbrook's expression shifted to surprise, then understanding. "Collins mentioned you'd been approached. I didn't know if you'd consider it. Working with you directly, rather than invisibly in the background." Julia smiled. "It would certainly be different from polishing your silverware, but perhaps equally valuable in its own way," he suggested, returning her smile. "The Foundation's work takes me to some challenging locations. Having someone I trust watching my back would be reassuring." The word trust hung between them, significant given their complicated history. "Is that what we've established these past months?" Julia asked quietly. "Trust?" Westbrook considered her question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "You saved my life, revealed your true identity at great personal risk, and helped dismantle an international criminal organization that had infiltrated the highest levels of intelligence agencies. Yes, I'd say trust has been established." His matter-of-fact assessment made her smile. "When you put it that way. Besides," he continued, his tone softening slightly, "I've grown accustomed to having you around in whatever capacity." The admission surprised her. For 5 years, she had been nearly invisible to him, a silent presence maintaining his household. Now he was acknowledging her importance in his life with unexpected openness. "Then I accept," Julia said, making her decision. "Though I should warn you, my housekeeping services are not included in this new arrangement." Westbrook laughed, the sound warming the space between them. "I believe I can manage without that particular skill set, valuable though it was." Outside, the autumn day was fading toward evening, golden light filtering through the trees surrounding the house. In the distance, a car approached, likely the security team returning from their perimeter check. When do we start? Julia asked. The foundation is launching a new initiative in Southeast Asia next month, Westbrook replied. Sustainable agriculture development with significant economic implications for the region. We'll need to be in Singapore for the initial meetings. Singapore? Julia nodded thoughtfully. I've never been there, at least not as myself. Then it will be a first for both of us, Westbrook said, standing to refresh their coffee. A new beginning, so to speak. As he moved around the kitchen with casual ease, Julia observed him with the same attention to detail that had once been her professional hallmark. But now she watched openly, not from the shadows, saw him as a partner rather than a subject of protection or a distant employer. Life had come full circle in the strangest way. The woman who had whispered those 4 critical words, "Stay quiet and don't move," had set in motion events that transformed both their lives. What began as a moment of crisis had evolved into an unexpected partnership built on the most unlikely foundation. Truth after years of necessary deception. Whatever challenges awaited them, whether in the boardrooms of Singapore or the remote villages of developing nations, they would face them together. No longer housemaid and billionaire, not just analyst and asset, but 2 people who had seen each other at their most vulnerable and found strength in that shared experience. To new beginnings, Westbrook said, raising his coffee cup in a small toast as he rejoined her. Julia smiled, raising her own cup to meet his, and to staying neither quiet nor still. Outside, the leaves continued their autumn dance, carried by winds of change that had been set in motion that stormy night months ago, when a maid saved a billionaire, and both their worlds were forever transformed.